What up, YouTube? JJ Doesn't Make back at y'all with another video. So Dana White's bold ass just went on an Instagram live and broke down the upcoming events, UFC 324 and UFC 325 in Las Vegas and Sydney respectively. And we're going to look through the fights, look which ones make sense, which ones don't make sense, and give our early predictions for the incoming fights in 2026. First of all, UFC 324 Las Vegas, January 24th. The main event, Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight championship. Ilia Topuria is out dealing with some custody battle or some shit. So we're going to have to crown a new interim lightweight champion. It's between Gaethje and Pimblett. And people aren't happy because Arman Tsarukyan just went out and beat Dan Hooker fair and square, dominated him. Wasn't a boring fight like some fighters. I think he's from a different region, or the same region, just a different area from where the boring fighters live. But nonetheless, this fight's for the interim title, and Arman is not a part of it. So what this means is the winner of this fight, whether it be Justin Gaethje or Paddy Pimblett, will most likely be fighting Ilia Topuria for the undisputed title, champion versus champion, at the White House, leaving Arman Tsarukyan without a fight until at least the end of next year, at least October or November or even December of next year. And we're in November of 2025. We're looking at December of 2026 potentially for Arman Tsarukyan's next fight after he was inactive since April of 2024. It's crazy, man. Arman Tsarukyan is missing out on a fight, but these guys are fighting for the interim title. Gaethje threatened retirement if he wasn't fighting for a belt, and Paddy's a superstar. And yeah, I guess this is what they've given us. It's for a belt. I believe it was because Harrison and Nunes, the Paramount, didn't want them to be the main event, which is completely understandable. So this fight should be good. It's striker versus grappler. And my official early prediction is Paddy Pimblett by submission. I think Gaethje's very good on the feet, but if Paddy can mix in the striking and the grappling, he can have some success on the feet and he can have success on the ground, which is, I think, how he will win this fight. Maybe third round submission. Look, Gaethje has good defensive wrestling. His wrestling is pretty good, but it's the jiu-jitsu and the submission defense that has costed him before against Khabib and Oliveira in those two title fights. And I think the same problem will arise in this fight as well. I think Gaethje is probably a bit slower on the feet, which in this matchup I think will be a detriment. I think if he goes out there and goes crazy and blitzes like OG Big Rufus did, I think he has a better chance of winning. But a more reserved Gaethje, Paddy will be able to scout and look for takedowns and have some activity on the feet that can threaten Gaethje's game. But I could see Gaethje going out there and finishing Pimblett, but I think it's Pimblett's time, and I think he's going to go out there and sub Gaethje, which is crazy because 2 years ago, Paddy Pimblett wasn't even considered to be anywhere near the rankings. And here we are 2 years later, and he's fighting for a belt. And he's a pretty big favorite against Gaethje. I believe he is $1.44. I don't know what that is in minus or US odds, but he's a pretty sizable favorite. I think 2-1 favorite. So yeah, I'm going to go with Paddy Pimblett by decision. The co-main event of that fight card, Harrison versus Nunes. It's probably the biggest women's fight for the rest of women's MMA history that they could possibly do. Amanda Nunes is the greatest of all time, and Kayla Harrison has some level of star power to her, unlike any other woman in this division. And I'm going to go with Harrison by submission. I think she'll be too much for Nunes. As good as Nunes is on the feet, Nunes could do good work on the feet, but I just think when Harrison has her down, and she will take her down for multiple rounds, and I think eventually with the time she has to work, she will finish Nunes on the ground, and I believe it will be a submission. But it could go either way, but I think Harrison should be the favorite and is the favorite. She has pressure, she has size, and I think she's going to win. I just don't vision Nunes winning. And if she does, women's MMA is really done, because the 115 strawweight division really has no hype to it. Weili's probably going to go down there and win the belt. The 125 pound division, Valentine is clearing out, but no one really cares. And this division is the worst of all of them. This is the last fight it can offer. And after this fight, I think the UFC should consider closing the women's division. There's no real incentive to have it. There's no big super fights they can do anymore, unless Valentina moves up, but I think she'll just get smothered and lose, especially if Nunes, which I'm predicting will get smothered and lose. I just don't think it'll be worth it to have a women's division, especially the entertainment factor. There's no real stars, especially after this fight, because Harrison's also pretty old as well. I believe she's 34 or 35. And she said the making 135 pound weight class is very taxing on her body. So as she's getting older, she probably isn't going to do it. And she's made her bag. She's won the championship. She's defended it if she wins against the greatest of all time. And I think she could call it a career. So the conversation of women's MMA being around for much longer, I think should be considered. Regardless, the featured bout on the card, Sean O'Malley returns to fight Song Yadong. And I'm going to go with O'Malley by decision. I think his striking is still very underrated. I think he has the best striking in the whole UFC. I know that's a bit crazy, but he's certainly up there in that top 3. And I think people forget, man. Before the Merab fights, O'Malley was considered as the guy to beat Ilya. You know, I know that narrative's gone now, but if you don't have a guy like Merab with the pressure and the grappling to stop and thwart the striking of O'Malley, it's very hard to beat O'Malley on the feet. I could see O'Malley getting a knockout, but I think Song will get tagged and be more reserved. I think he could mix in some grappling, but I don't think that's going to be insanely competitive. Maybe 129-28 scorecard, but I think a pretty easy and clear decision for O'Malley is probably what's going to happen. After this, there's another fight in this division that's taking place, but I don't know what they really do with bantamweight. Maybe Merab moves up if he beats Piotr. If O'Malley wins this, he needs at least one more fight, maybe 2 more if Merab's going to stay champion. And if Song Yadong wins, I guess give him a title shot, because Merab's clearing out the division and fighting anyone in that top 5 or top 3-ish range or whatever. So, yeah. Next fight, Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Derek Lewis. I'm gonna go with Acosta by knockout. Look, Lewis has the most knockouts in the history of the UFC, but he's also been knocked out a fair few times, and I think Waldo Cortez Acosta is very good. I think his striking's good, and he's quick, and he's powerful. And in a heavyweight division, that can take you a long way. Lewis is powerful, but I don't think he's that awfully quick. And yeah, I think Cortez Acosta has the speed. I think he's younger, and ultimately he's who I'm picking. Lewis could go out there and knock him out, but I just don't think it's likely. Next fight, Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva. This one is going to be a banger. Arnold Allen hasn't fought by this point, it would have been a year and a half, 18 months, because he's had all types of injuries, and that's sort of been his career. A lot of injuries. He's only lost a couple times in the UFC, and they were competitive. And Gene Silva's coming off a loss to Diego Lopes, who's next up for the belt again. So this is a high-stakes fight. I'm going to go with Gene Silva by knockout. It's a very competitive fight. Good matchmaking from the UFC with most of these fights, but especially this one. But sometimes you got to think, it's not about what could happen, it's about what's more likely to happen. Arnold Allen could go out there and he could school and style on Gene Silva and scrap with him and be the better fighter, but what is more likely is Gene Silva probably catching him with the missiles in his hands, the power that he possesses, And I think he will find the chin of Arnold Allen, who gets tagged in a lot of his fights. And I feel like Gene Silva has the power to put him away and stop the fight in the second or third round, maybe. But I hope Arnold Allen wins because I like Arnold Allen. He's only lost to Evloev, who that was a very close fight, and Evloev should be next up for the belt, or he should have been challenging for the belt in Sydney, but regardless. And Max Holloway, who's a top 10 pound for pound fighter in the world, in my opinion. I think he's number 11 or 12, which he should be higher, but. And that was a very competitive fight. So regardless, should be a great fight. Tuning into that one. And on the prelims of this card, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Davison Figueiredo. Umar coming off a win to Mario Batista. It wasn't a dominant win, although it was 30-27 on all the judges' scorecards. But there were some moments where Mario was in that fight. He almost got him with a submission in the first round. He dropped him, I believe, in the second round. And I think Umar needs at least one more win. And he needs to win decisively to show that he can beat Merab. Because Merab on this run is just clearing out the division and lapping it. And Umar seems to be the chosen one to beat Merab. If anyone in this division can do that. But Figueiredo, on the other hand, he's got power. He's got good grappling. But I will go with Umar by decision. I just think the wrestling and the control is on another level for this division. He's got that Dagestani style, which isn't particularly boring. In the Mario Batista fight, it was quite entertaining with the takedowns and the scrambles and the back takes. And I think it's going to be a very similar fight to this one. We saw Figueiredo, although he's a very good jiu-jitsu guy, he struggled with the grappling against Sandhagen, and he wasn't able to do anything on the feet. Maybe he could have a moment in this fight similar to Mario Batista dropping Umar. But I don't think it'll be enough, and I think Umar will get a decision win, 29-28, 30-27 type decision, and he'll be next up for the belt if Merab wins. And the last fight on this card, Alexa Grasso versus Thug Rose. I'm going to go with Grasso, or Thug Rose by decision. I think it'll probably be a split decision, could go either way. But I think Thug Rose is the biggest star, and if the judges prioritize that, I think she'll get the nod here. Although Grasso is from Mexico, and we seem to just be giving Mexicans privilege when it comes to MMA at the moment, which we'll get to in a bit. But I think Thug Rose has the skills to beat Grasso. Grasso just lost to Natalia Silva. I say just lost, it was in May. In a fight where she just didn't have much to offer on the feet. I think this will be a bit different, but I think Thug Rose will incorporate the grappling. And we've seen the wrestling defense of Alexa Grasso not be great, especially in that fight, the third fight with Valentina. And I think this will be a close fight, competitive, probably pretty boring, but I'm picking Rose to win this by decision. And now for UFC 325, only one fight has been announced, but it's quite the controversial one. February 1st. I will attend this event and I'll give an analytical breakdown of every fight live. Maybe we'll do a vlog, who knows what will happen, but I'll definitely be going to this. Alexander Volkanovski defending the title against Diego Lopes. And when I heard this, I didn't like it, but now I've been thinking about it. It is Volk's most dangerous fight in the division. If anyone's going to beat him, it'll be Lopes. I think stylistically no one else has much to offer. Maybe Yair, but Volk already beat him. I think Evloev's grappling will be no problem for Volk, even though it's very good. I think he'll tire in the later rounds if they were to fight. I think that Murphy would just get schooled on the feet, even though they talk about Murphy as like a kickboxing, super clean. I think Volk would just jab him and kick him at range until until Murphy makes a mistake, and Volk will just continue the beatdown. He'll apply the wrestling in that fight. So I think Lopes is the hardest match. I didn't want to see this fight get made, both because I've seen it before, and also he's probably the most dangerous matchup for Volk. But if this is Volk's last fight, it's slightly disappointing, although it's not horrible. because I think Lopes is the future of the division. I think if Lopes was to go up and fight Paddy or Gaethje, he would absolutely smoke them. So, and they're fighting for the interim belt. So I guess in terms of skill matchup, he's pretty good. He's tough. He's durable. And this is a close fight. Back and forth. Volk is a decent favorite, although I'm not extremely confident. However, I will be picking him by decision because, look, in the first fight, he can look at that fight and make adjustments. It was him making the mistakes, and Lopes in those moments, like in the 5th round, in the 3rd round, in the second round, he had a moment. In the 1st round, there were no real moments from Lopes. It's just Volk sort of doing his thing, and it's the Volk's the ones that made the mistakes, the big mistakes in the first fight, that I think he can polish out and iron, even though he's getting older and the chin's deteriorating and the speed's a bit slower. I still think he's one of the most skilled fighters of all time. He can look at that fight, make the adjustments, avoid the mistakes, and win this fight by decision. Although there's something about this fight that I just cannot vision Volk winning and retiring, but I'll pick him because that's what my brain and heart says. But Lopes could go out there and finish Volk. I wouldn't be surprised. Regardless, if Volk does win, the division is in shambles because they've sort of booked themselves into a corner with how these fights have been matched. I would have done Volk versus Evloev. If Volk does retire and win and retire, that's cool. The next pay-per-view, they could have done Lopes versus Yair or Lopes versus Murphy for the vacant belt. And if Lopes wins, that's a star. That's a star right there. You could use the reasoning that Lopes got better since the first Volk fight, since he beat Gene Silver and beat another one to win the belt, and he deserves it. But if Lopes loses, the division's sort of stuck because Evloev, it doesn't have that star power. Murphy doesn't have that star power. Yair's lost numerous times in recent memory. So none of those guys can be truly legitimate star champions. So if for the UFC, the Lopes needs to win, but I edge Volk in this fight in the early prediction. Maybe later on, I'll analyze the footage, give a more in-depth breakdown. But for now, I'm sticking with Volk. So yeah, UFC 323 or 324 and 325, Vegas and Sydney. They're happening with a span of a week of each other, which is pretty cool. I can't remember the last time that happened with 2 pay-per-views. Both on Paramount, so that's pretty cool. Don't have to use Russian link, as Habib would say. Habib. Regardless, UFC 324, 325, some interesting fights. They should be pretty good. Some disappointments, some questionable fights, but overall pretty good from the UFC. And yeah, that was the video. I have some big videos planned later this week or early next week over the weekend. And yeah, should be pretty good. Like, subscribe, do all that shit, and I'll catch y'all in a bit.